going live. I'm letting the audience build up first before I start telling my story of what happened that night. Hawks Lahell. Hawks Lahell. How's it going, brother? I'm gonna tell my story of what happened that night when me and the brother Chester Earl got arrested. So that night was a very intense night to begin with. You know, me and Darren and Bonita had planned on just going down there and then getting video footage of them doing construction still on the facility and the pipe work being put in the ground. You know, I was laying there and I was doing my tobacco ceremony like I do every night, saying my prayers, and Darren and Bonita had called me, so we headed down there, and the first place that we showed up to was where they're actually building the LNG facility inside the port. You know, and I chose the spot right here because this is how close and intermingled we are with the port of Tacoma. You see behind me, this is the mouth of our river, the Puyallup River, and you see the pollution that happens right behind me. You know, those are some of the reasons that I find it necessary to, you know, stop the injustices that the port puts into our rivers and into our waters and everything. But anyways, back to the story. We went down there to the LNG facility where it's being built, and it was dark. You know, it was just the gates were closed, nobody was working. So I told Darren and Bonita, I was like, man, it's just gonna look like we're standing out here in the dark time. You know what I mean? Reporting on how they're still building the facility. And you know, something in my spirit told me that this was gonna happen. You know, before I left the house, like I said, I was praying, and you know, just felt spiritually charged before I left the house. And so my spirit told me that wasn't the place, you know, that we actually needed to go where they're building in Fife. So we went down there. And when we got down there, we were just supposed to get footage, and you know, my sister Anna Bean had showed up, and it turned into something else on the spot. You know, I went over there and I was just like, let's go over there and ask them to show the permits and see what's going on and see why they're still doing construction. So we went over there and we confronted the flagger, and the flagger had called the police, said he was calling the supervisor, but he really called the Fife Police Department. So we were standing there confronting them, and you know, they never showed no permits or anything. The supervisors never came up and talked to us. And you know, Fife Police showed up and had gotten confrontational, and you know what I mean, I felt my tamanwas come in, and I was super spiritually charged that night. You know, I was confronting the cop, I was confronting the worker, asking for the supervisor to come up and asking for the proof of notice of construction permits that they never provided. So then we called our tribal police to come down there and enforce of what we thought was the notice to stop construction work order, but we hadn't noticed that it hadn't been signed off by a judge yet. And so it was just a request to stop working, you know, so I had to make a decision within myself on the spot. And we had talked about it, and we came to that point that we're protecting our sovereignty. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it came down to that night, is we was protecting our sovereignty. You know what I mean? And exercising our sovereignty. And if you know what sovereignty means, that's the tribe's right to govern itself and govern its own land, and free will to do business with merchants. And so that's what it came down to, is we said we had to protect our sovereignty. When our tribal council finds that they are in violation of laws on our own reservation, and the city of Fife is well within our reservation boundaries, that should be law. That should be law on a sovereign nation land. We're still hosting the United States government. As First Nation people, we're still hosting the United States government. You know, and we had to protect our sovereignty that night. So we came to the decision that there's tribal members right here. We're going to have each tribal member block off the road. You know, there was 4 of us at first, and it was me, Chester Earl, Anna Bean, and my mom and my brother. So we barricaded across the road, and like my brother was saying, there was 6 trucks that I had originally stopped. You know what I mean? They didn't want to be confrontational. And so finally, the sixth or seventh one came up, and he acted like he was going to run me down, you know. So I stood my ground, and I wanted to be ran over. And if that's what it takes for awareness to happen, you know, that's what I feel like should happen. You know, if it comes to them assault me and we're still peaceful and we're still prayerful, which I proved that night by, you know what I mean, just being arrested and being and drug off, you know, that's what it was going to take. And the tribal police had jumped up on his window and banged on his window and got him to stop, and they arrested me. You know, and I'm standing there and I'm walking away, and I'm walking away, and I'm like, yep, all right, boom, all right, we're gonna go to jail and we're gonna get this through, and we're gonna stay in there, we're gonna fast. You know what I mean? After I read Dick Gregory's quote, I wanted to stay in jail and fast. You know what I mean? To get awareness even more raised. You know, and I'm sitting in there and I'm just like, all right, cool, I'm gonna have to get ready for this time sitting in jail. And I look over my shoulder, and here's my brother Chester Earl right behind me, and I'm just like, right on, bro. Yep, let's go to jail. And so we get in there, and you know, the 5 police had asked me, he goes, do you regularly get arrested on these protests and these rallies? I said, no, this is my first time. And he just looked at me, he goes, so did you do it for media attention? I was just like, just know you started the shit storm, bro. And he just looked at me like, fuck, what did I do? And, you know, to me, they violated our sovereignty, you know? And that's exactly what we was protecting that night, is our sovereignty. And when we went to the Fish Wars a couple days, or the very next day, I think it was, went to the Fish Wars Remembrance Days, you know what I mean? I looked at them elders, and them elders are original water warriors, you know? They was out here getting beat by game and fish wardens and arrested out here on the thing. And I was sitting amongst them, and I was just like, God, you know what I mean? I'm sitting amongst people that actually fought for their rights, you know what I mean? They fought for our rights, they fought for our sovereignty. And that was close to 60 years ago. 60 years ago, why we still fight for our sovereignty? 60 years later, you know what I mean? These governments, everything made our ancestors sign into this. You know what I mean? We remember that. Remember the Medicine Creek Treaty. We remember the lands claim settlement, but we're constantly educating these governments on what they signed into with us. That's BS to me. You know what I mean? We shouldn't have to educate them. You know what I mean? They should come in knowing what they signed into on these treaties. You know? So we got arrested protecting our sovereignty, you know, and for future generations, and to stop this, our salmon, our waters, Mother Earth. We're living in climate change. If you got to go to jail and to prove a point, like my brother said, sometimes the actions are well worth the consequences. Well worth it. And trust me, that was well worth it. You know, because not only did it get a bunch of stuff going, you know, there's a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. And I hope they don't dismiss the charges. I hope that we go to trial for these charges. You know what I mean? The max sentence on the case is only 90 days. I'll go and sit down for 90 days. If that's what it takes for my sons to have a sustainable future, is 90 days. You know what I mean? I'll do that time and time again. You know what I mean? I've already given the U.S. government and these jails and all this stuff growing up the way I grew up. I gave them a lot of free time. This isn't free time. This is for my kids' future. I have 4 sons. You know what I mean? My grandma lives within the blast zone, the kill zone, zone 2 of incineration to the community. You know, that's why I find it so necessary to fight. You know, to protect our ways of life, to stop stuff like this that's happening behind me. Climate change is real. Mother Earth is proving she's getting ready to fight back. That earthquake that happened in Mexico, that's Mother Earth proving she's getting ready to fight back. She isn't going to let us keep living like this and making these choices that are destroying her. We're letting these corporations making these choices thinking that we can't stand up to them because we're standing up to money. No, there's too many of us. There's a lot of us out here. And if we all stood up at the same time, their corrupt game would be over. Their capitalism would be over. We need a sustainable future. Puget Sound Energy, the Port of Tacoma, all these corporations, I could keep going through them. They're about capitalism. They're about making money. They're about raping Mother Earth until it's too late. You know, so that had happened, and Jim Rideout had came and bailed us out and scored jail. They took us way out of town. They took us about 20 miles out of town and took us to a whole different jail, and they could have took us to Pierce County jail, and we would have probably been let out right from Pierce County jail, or even our own tribal jail. We would have been released right out, you know. So they took us 20 miles away from there, and they kept us there for 6 or 8 hours while Jim Rideout was bailing us out. And we sat in there, and the only thing I could do was laugh about it. I was just like, you know, I finally understand what my grandmother had meant. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you. And my grandmother, my great grandmother, they fought for our rights. They fought for our sovereignty. They fought for our rights to fish these waters, everything. I never understood it. I was like, why are you doing this for me? Why are you doing this for me? And now I'm 28 years old, and I understand what she meant by I'm doing this for you. And what she meant was I was a future generation. That's what we're doing these fights for. They understood that back in the 60s, 50s, and even beyond that. That we gotta live for 7 generations ahead. The decisions that we make today are 7 generations ahead. They will affect them. They will feel them whether they're good or bad. You know, I say it all the time on my Facebook page. They will feel the decisions that we make today. You know, so when we got picked out, Ramona Bennett and Elder Anna Bean, Sean Peterson, there was a lot of people that were there to pick us up. And even Carlo, you know what I mean? One of the brothers from Seattle was there to pick us up. And it felt good to know that that many people had waited there that many hours, you know, when we got out. You know, and I didn't realize the impact of us being arrested that night as tribal members getting arrested on the reservation by 5 police department would have until the very next morning. And I seen what the effects of it, you know, and there was a lot of effects that happened. You know, I go down there, and I went down there to our tribal council chambers to thank Jim, and you know, they was having meetings right away about what had happened that night, you know, and it felt good. So it got a lot going, you know what I mean? It raised a lot of awareness, you know. And I had give Jim an eagle feather. You know, I'm not, you know, I had to quit my job to get out here and do my part to put a stop to this LNG facility. So I don't have a lot of money all the time. You know what I mean? I have a little bit of money that I'm making on every month, and that's about it. So I gave him an eagle feather, you know, a very respectable thing in our culture, you know. And but anyways, when I had gotten out, I came home, and I had asked my family member if I could tell this story, but I came home. And the next morning when I woke up, I only slept for about an hour and a half or so. And I woke up, and my mom comes out, and she hands me a thing, and I didn't accept it at first because I knew what it was. You know what I mean? It was bundled up, and I knew it was a chanupa. I'm looking at it, and I was like, "What's that?" She goes, "It's yours. You know, your family member had dropped it off last night and said this was yours." And I was just like, that means I got to carry myself like that all the time. You know, I got to carry myself as a pipe carrier now. You know, I got to constantly carry myself like that. And I was like, that's a big responsibility. Like, you ask people for, you know what I mean? You ask them if they're ready for that responsibility. I wasn't asked about that responsibility. It was dropped on me. It was bestowed on me because that person had listened to his spirit and his heart, you know, and knew that chanupa was supposed to come to me. You know what I mean? That chanupa spoke to him. It spoke to his spirit. You know what I mean? Our chanupas, our pipes are alive. You know, and if you're really in connection with that way of life, you'll hear it, you know? And so I'm sitting there and I'm holding it, and I unbundle it and I look at it, and I just couldn't even believe it. I was just like, I'm really a pipe carrier now, you know what I mean? I'm sitting there, I'm looking at it, and ever since I've gotten that chanupa, you know what I mean? I called my cousin the next day, and I said, it feels like I've been looking for something for a while. You know what I mean? And I don't feel like that anymore. I don't feel like I'm looking for something. I feel like something that was missing from me came back to me. And she just tells me, she goes, oh my God, the person that had given it to her just looked at it. She said, he knew, you know what I mean? It would change you. You know what I mean? Like, you would be even more awakened or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only way to describe how I felt, is that I feel complete again. And, you know, ever since then, you know what I mean? It was truly a spiritually charged night, like my brother was saying. You know what I mean? That's the only way to go about it. It was truly spiritually charged. You know, I got out, and I hadn't even realized that it was a blood red full moon that night. You know what I mean? And with my grandma's spirit being from from the Wolf Clan, I should have known that it was gonna happen like that. You know what I mean? I didn't even bother to look up at the moon until we was already out there, and I seen that the moon was just blood red. You know, so yeah, man, we just emotionally charged, you know. And I was so grateful, you know what I mean, that the first 2 Puyallups had been arrested for it, you know what I mean, fighting for our sovereignty and fighting for our way of life, and telling these people that we don't want their LNG facility on our ancestral lands, we don't want their pipes on our reservation, you know what I mean. We already battle enough with our salmon runs, like Chester was saying, you know what I mean. Every year and every generation it gets worse, you know what I mean. Our salmon are endangered. You know, I was at a community meeting where they told us that in 4 years our runs might be extinct. 4 years. We're literally the salmon people on the Salish Sea. So you're going to kill our food off even more? You're going to kill our ancestors? You're going to kill our living ancestors out there off even more? You know, and that's to Puget Sound Energy, and that's to the Port of Tacoma. That's who I asked those questions to. You know, the port's been down here polluting for ever since they've been down here. The port has done nothing but polluting. Right below me where I'm sitting, there's a pipe that's a runoff pipe for the Port of Tacoma, and it's everything that comes when it rains, all that rain and all the stuff that it carries, it goes right out here into the river. This big pipe, you can't see it right now because it's not low tide, but when we're down there fishing, we see this pipe and we see all the stuff that comes out of the Port of Tacoma and into our river, to the mouth of our river, where our salmon have to, you know what I mean, our salmon have to sit there and accumulate before they go from the salt water to the fresh water. So our salmon are sitting here in this stuff. And that's the disrespect that the port has shown us ever since they showed up on our lands. And they keep letting people like Puget Sound Energy, Targa, all these places put all this nasty stuff into our port. You know, so I know I've talked about a lot of stuff. I was supposed to talk about why we got arrested that night. You know, I know we talked about a lot of stuff, but, you know, I just wanted to fill you guys in on the reasons that I do this. You know, I got 4 sons. You know, my grandmother and all them live in the kill zone, in a direct kill zone from LNG. This is our ancestral lands. You know, if this place is built, we can't just pack up and move. We've been here since time immemorial. Where are we gonna go? We gotta live down here with this threat on our lands. We can't just pack up the whole tribe and leave. No, we gotta stand up and fight back. Stand up and defend our lands with all our brothers and sisters that stand with us time and time again. You know, it doesn't matter if you're from a tribe or not, you know what I mean? What matters is that you live on the Salish Sea, you live out here. You breathe in this air. You drink this water. You know, that's what matters. That's what we're doing this for. You know, so we can do some questions and answers, you know what I mean? You guys just ask me the questions, you know, and I'll answer them to the best of my best of my abilities. You stand up, fight back, sis. Oh, you guys, nobody has any questions then, huh? Oh yeah, I'll definitely see you Tuesday night. We're gonna carry that tribal flag that council has given us. It'll be right on my shoulder in there. You know, that's another thing that we've been saying, is that our flag isn't flown in the commissioner meetings, city council hall meetings. You know, and it's going to be in there. You know what I mean? It's going to be flown proudly. Yeah, so. Yeah, mad respect to you too. Mad respect to all of you. I love all of you. You know, that everybody that finds it necessary to stand up and defend Mother Earth. I love everybody, you know what I mean? Even waking those people up. You know, I had my cousin come up and tell me, and he doesn't even come out to the rallies or the front lines, but he goes to work and he raises awareness at his work. And he's showing his coworker videos of LNG. He's like, this is what my cousin's trying to fight. This is what my cousin's out here, you know what I mean, doing. And he's raising awareness, and he's telling me this, and I just looked at him. I was like, no, it's a group effort, bro. But thank you for raising awareness too. He was like, yeah, I don't come out there, but I tell everybody about what's going on out there. And you know what I mean? That's exactly what it's about. You know what I mean? Everybody has their job and their position. And even if that's what you're doing out there, keep doing that. You know what I mean? Raise awareness to the world. You know what I mean? If the only thing you can do is tell your coworkers or tell your friends of what's going on and raise awareness, because not everybody knows what's going on the way we think that everybody has to know what's going on, because you just raise that awareness in the community, and that's what brings more people out that can actually come out there, and they can come out there, stand on the front lines, or they can go to these city council meetings or port of commissioner meetings or whatever level that you feel necessary to do. That's what it's about. You tell your neighbor, you tell your friends, you know what I mean? And it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, so yep, exactly. So yeah, there's not looking like a whole lot of questions to be answered. So hey man, Haishka, thank you to all of you. You know, you're all my brothers and sisters on the front lines, you know what I mean? Brothers and sisters that are at home sharing these videos, you know what I mean? Raising awareness. You know, we're a big family out here, and we know what's going on out here, you know, and we're saying no. No means no. We don't want your facilities here. We want a sustainable future. We want renewable energies, you know. So hey, like I said, thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you for listening to the story. I know we covered a lot of whole different bases, and you kind of have to dissect the story from everything else that went in, but I'm glad you guys tuned in. I'm glad that everybody's out here sharing the video. I love all you guys, and Hoyt, lots of boot.